Welcome. I am Tim Conlon interviewing Dr. Bruce Neubauer to ask him a few questions regarding modern public administration and its future. This recording is being made in January of 2012 in Albany, Georgia. Bruce, you have been teaching public administration now for about 20 years. What does public administration mean to you, and how has your perception of it changed over the years?
Public administration, Tim, is similar to business administration in that it involves planning and managing and evaluating organizations. But whereas business administration is focused on corporations and other for-profit organizations, public administration usually is focused upon government agencies and nonprofit organizations. I don't think public administration the focus of public administration has changed too much over the years, but I do believe that the distinction between public administration and business administration is becoming less distinct than it was some years ago. This is because many government agencies are now outsourcing some of the activities that they used to perform themselves. And so when a government agency is working under contract or has a contract involving a nonprofit organization or a faith-based organization, or for that matter a for-profit organization working for government under the contract, things get kind of blurred together. So I think perhaps that what has happened is that the public administration has not fundamentally changed, but the distinction between public administration and business administration is perhaps not as distinct as it has been in the past.
Okay. Well, why or how did you originally become interested in public administration?
I suppose that goes back to family of origin. I was an only child. I was born to parents who were older than most parents having newborn children. And I grew up in a household in which I found myself having to or wanting to take responsibility for the household at a relatively young age. And so I was trying to introduce structure and I was trying to assume an adult role when others were able to be children at those ages. And in a way, that's what government does. Government provides structure in which other kinds of organizations can do what they need to do. Government is in a sense a peacemaker. And so I suppose that my interest in creating structure, creating peace in social relationships dates back to my very early years. Also, my mother was essentially deaf. She had a little bit of hearing, but very little, and got most of her information from the local newspapers. I grew up in Cobb County, Georgia, and she was always reading the Marietta Daily Journal and the Smyrna Herald and other local news sources, and talking to me about what Mayor Krieger and Ernest Barrett on the county commission were doing and so forth. This was her world in a sense, because not being able to hear well, she wasn't able to glean information from other people as most people do. She got her information from the newspapers, and the newspapers locally were all about the local politicians and administrators. So, Tim, I think my interest in public administration largely derives from those early childhood years.
So do you think public administration is a good career choice today?
there used to be some degrees and some paths in the past were almost a sure bet, and I don't think there are any sure bets anymore. I think public administration is certainly valuable. It's certainly important, and people who have the right values, or not the right values, but people who have appropriate values that are aligned with public administration, and people who have personalities that align well with public administration can certainly find opportunities in the public sector. But I don't think anything, with the possible exception of nursing, is a sure ticket today. You know, some years ago, business administration was the ticket. A person got a master's of business administration, he or she could, know that they were going to be able to move into a good career with upward potential. So my answer is yes, it's a good path, but it's not the path for everybody, but it is a good path.
All right. Well, in your experiences, why do students choose to study public administration, and what do you think are the best motives for studying public administration?
I've worked with a lot of students through the years, and every time I think I've seen it all, I meet I meet somebody else who takes another approach to things. There are different motivations that students have when they come into public administration programs. Some students are already working in the public sector, either in a government agency or a nonprofit, and they want to advance their career by gaining the additional degree. And that's good. That's a fine motive. Others realize that the economy is not so good right now and are not able to find the kind of job that they see as leading to the career that they want to ultimately have. And so they come into a public administration education program because they don't want to do for the rest of their lives what they're doing right now. That's a good motive also. The motive that I sometimes wonder about is the motive that I need, the idea that I need an MPA degree because I want to make the world a better place. Well, making the world a better place is certainly a noble and good purpose. However, when I encounter students like that, if the student will allow me, I try to have a conversation with them in which I say, this degree is not necessarily going to enable you to make the world a better place. One more MPA in the world doesn't necessarily equate to a better world. You can make the world a better place without a degree. The MPA is about personnel administration, it's about budgeting and finance, it's about information systems. If you want to make the world a better place, it might be a better investment of your time, and I'm just speaking for myself here. It might be a better investment of your time to simply use what you already know and what you already have to make the world a better place. Now, the caveat here is perhaps if the student's motivation is to start a nonprofit organization and the ability to initiate a nonprofit organization and to manage it, that is more closely aligned with having a degree in public administration. But solely the motive to do good, it doesn't take a degree to do good. It just takes a willingness to commit time and to pursue one's own passions. So, again, I believe in public administration. I value it. I teach it. But I don't know that it is a necessary prerequisite for doing good. In fact, I'm sure it's not.
Do you think that some people are better to be suited to become public administrators than others?
Absolutely, Tim. Public administration means being between. I mean, people coming particularly from political science may see public administration as being about having power and therefore the ability to make things happen. I don't think so, especially as the world is going now. I think people who are well suited to public administration, number one, have public service values. They do care. They want to spend a day at work and come home with some sense of, I helped someone today. But they do that through their ability to work with others in networks of associations, not because public administrators have power in the political sense. Our system politically is very fragmented. We have the national government, we have all the agencies, we have the state government, all the agencies of state government, cities, counties, school boards. Public administration is about working across the boundaries because the problems that our nation faces and our people face do not respect the boundaries of political jurisdictions. Public administrators work across the boundaries. I'm an introvert. That's one of the reasons I teach rather than try to be a public administrator. I think a personality attribute of a good public administrator is extroversion. People who love being with other people who can remember other people's names, that even if they've not seen them for a while, people who enjoy joining civic organizations. Those are the attributes of a good public administrator. I'm not saying that people who do not have that extroversion cannot find a place in public administration, but I think it might be harder for them to find a place than people who just naturally want to be with other people.
Well, in your opinion, what is the value of the class literature of the academic field of public administration?
The classic literature reflects the fact that scholars since the early 1900s have been wrestling with a number of fundamental issues. And public administration is still wrestling with those issues. And we don't need to reinvent. When we wrestle with the issues, we need an understanding of what others have thought about these things. And one of the things that public administration education is about is knowing the people who wrote and thought about these things since the early 1900s, and being able to ground our efforts in what they wrote so that we aren't simply so that we don't simply imagine that we're discovering answers when in fact others have discovered those answers, and we can work from a better platform if we build upon what others have thought rather than imagining that all of these things are new. Let me move forward to the issue of the dichotomy, Tim. The dichotomy is the idea that politics and administration can be separated from each other, and that public administrators can avoid politics and focus exclusively on administrative issues and values. The dichotomy has fallen. That ideal that public administration can be insulated from politics has fallen. We no longer believe that. And yet, during the Bush administration and the Clinton administrations recently, efforts to improve productivity in the agencies of the national government have been premised apparently upon the old notion of the dichotomy. Well, we shouldn't be either the scholars who wrote the classic literature missed the boat, or we're missing the boat. And personally, I think the classic literature, I think what has been written by others years ago serves to inform our efforts to improve government agencies today, and yet it seems as if those in power may not be fully aware of that literature, because the answers that they come up with, be it under a Democratic administration or a Republican administration, seem to suppose that the dichotomy, the separation, is still there, when we long ago decided it really wasn't. And I believe the dichotomy is not there, and therefore I believe that recent efforts to improve the national government and its agencies are ill-fated. They're not likely to be successful because they're not informed by some of the scholars who wrote many years ago.
You often emphasize the idea of there not being a dichotomy between administration and politics. What is that about, and why do you think it's important?
Well, for the reason I just said. If we don't know what others have discovered, then in a sense we're destined to make the mistakes that we should have avoided. Again, the dichotomy is the idea that administrators can be insulated from politics, and in fact they cannot. And therefore, if we want to improve the performance of the agencies of the national government, we have to accommodate the fact that politics is the origin of the red tape and the other problems that they are facing. The recent efforts do not reflect that realization, in my opinion.
Well, how would you advise someone who is undecided regarding whether to study political science, business administration, or public administration?
All of those are very good fields of study and can lead to meaningful careers. I think when one realizes that one is not likely to have a political career and cannot make a livelihood out of working on other people's campaigns, that a person who has been trained in political science looks around and says, fine, I have this knowledge, but what am I going to do? What's going to put bread on the table? Well, shifting that interest in political science into public administration makes sense because it can put bread on the table. In terms of the distinction between public administration and business administration, I think the distinction is largely in terms of values. What do you need to feel good about what you're doing? Can you feel good about earning owners and shareholders the maximum possible profit, regardless of what the organization is doing? Or to feel good about what your career is, do you need some sense of a social mission? some people believe there's this enormous gap between business administration and public administration. I have degrees in both. I don't believe the gap is as wide as we pretend that it is, but I don't think I could feel I need to be on the public administration side of that, given my value system. If I was working for a corporation primarily so that the shareholders and stockholders made more money, I'd have to find some other way to realize my other values, which are more socially focused.
What are your thoughts on the future of public administration, both as a study and as a profession?
Public administration, like many other fields of study, is in a degree of turmoil. Education is changing. This neat system that we've created of disciplines and fields and boundaries and departments in major universities is convenient for some purposes, but public administration has been something of a stepchild for a long time, because when they house public administration in a political science department, that is often not a happy fit. And when they house public administration in a college of business administration, other issues arise. And often public administration as a field of study in the academic setting is not large enough to become its own college or its own freestanding department. So we've kind of been homeless in a way. The future of the field as a vocation, there's going to always be a need for people to be administrators in government. But as you know, there's a whole lot of pressure on downsizing government agencies because of tight budgets and so forth, and a lot of emphasis on outsourcing the things that government agencies used to do onto nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and even for-profits. So it's not so much a growing field as it is a changing field. The need will be there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the numbers of people directly employed by government is going to continue to increase, because so many people in the United States believe that the government is already too big and that somehow we ought to trim it down. But the government does a lot of very important things. Those things need to be done, but not necessarily by government employees.
All right, well, thank you, Bruce, for sharing your thoughts about public administration as a field study and a profession. And thank you to all of you out there who want to see this video.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.